In our headlines on this Tuesday, July 8th, here in South Korea, at the White House, Donald Trump extends his pause on country-specific tariffs from July 9th to August 1st after sending notifications to a number of American trade partners, including South Korea. And the Lee administration points to the extended time frame for tariff talks with the US as the president's security advisor continues his high-level interactions with US officials. Meanwhile, capital Seoul is noting its hottest day of the year thus far as the temperature soars to as high as 36 degrees Celsius, and health experts warn against outdoor activities. The relief is that the July deadline of the pause on country-specific US tariffs has been extended to August 1st. The regret is that South Korea is among the American trade partners to have received a letter unilaterally informing it of a 25% tariff. Our Moon Ji-young has details.
U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Monday extending the effective date for reciprocal tariff to August 1st, pushing back the previous July 9th deadline. Trump outlined the rates in letters to the leaders of countries, including South Korea and Japan, via Truth Social earlier on Monday, with rates ranging from 25% to 40%. Trump originally unveiled the tariff in April, but granted a 90-day reprieve so that countries could strike trade agreements.
I have the signed letters that went out to both South Korea and Japan today, and there will be approximately 12 other countries that will receive notifications and letters directly from the President of the United States.
In the letter, Trump threatened to impose 25% duties on South Korea, with higher duties for items deemed to have been transshipped through Korea from other countries. Trump stated that the relationship between Seoul and Washington has been, quote, far from reciprocal. He warned that any retaliatory tariff from Seoul would result in an additional surcharge on top of the 25%. However, Trump did leave open the possibility of an adjustment to the tariff rate for South Korea. The South Korean government views Trump's letter as an effective extension of the pause on new duties for Korean products. Seoul has been actively working to avoid or minimize the impact of these steep levies, as well as other tariffs on products such as automobiles, steel, and aluminum. According to Reuters, these reciprocal tariffs are separate from the sector-specific levies. In a press release, Seoul's trade ministry stated that South Korea will seek to address the trade deficit issue, a major concern of the U.S., by improving domestic rules and regulations. It also affirmed its commitment to creating opportunities in core industries through the two countries' partnership for manufacturing renaissance. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
In related news, the presidential office convened a meeting this afternoon to address the latest developments on the U.S. tariff front. For details on this, I have our correspondent Song Yoo-jin standing by live. Yoo-jin, welcome. So what has the top office said?
Right, so good afternoon, Sunny. It's certainly been a busy day here at the presidential office because, as you know, trade talks with Washington have been one of President Lee Jae-myung's top priorities. Now today, presidential spokesperson Kang Yoo-jung said that the administration sees value in the fact that they have a bit more time for negotiations and talks before the tariffs actually take effect. First, take a listen.
Given how little time there has been after the new administration was launched, we see it as having avoided the worst-case scenario of tariffs going up. We've now secured extra time for negotiations, and National Security Advisor Ri Sung-rak is continuing high-level talks in the U.S.
Now, in response to President Trump's latest announcement, Presidential Chief of Policy Kim Yong-bum convened a meeting this afternoon with the Ministries of Industry, Finance, and Foreign Affairs. Kim emphasized that although swift negotiations are important, safeguarding South Korea's national interests remain the highest priority and urged the ministries to approach talks with the U.S. with that in mind. Now, regarding the potential potential impact of the tariffs, Kim said market reactions have so far been relatively calm, but ordered close monitoring of exports and the broader economy. He also directed ministries to implement support measures for sectors likely to be affected, including autos and steel. Now, Kim added that once National Security Advisor Lee Seong-nak returns from Washington, they will hold a joint meeting to review the situation and discuss next steps.
Right, and speaking about that, could you tell us a bit more about the agenda of the top security advisor there in the U.S., Eugene?
Right. So South Korea's National Security Advisor Lee met with his American counterpart Marco Rubio on Monday local time. Now, according to the presidential office, the South Korean delegation, including Lee, once again reiterated the need to arrange a summit between Presidents Lee and Trump as soon as possible to make progress on key issues, to which the U.S. side agreed. Now, on tariffs specifically, Washington expressed hopes to reach a deal before the 25% duty kicks in. Now, I also want to note that on the same day, South Korea's top trade negotiator Yo Han-gu, who is also in Washington, met with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. There, Yo called for lowering tariffs on major Korean exports to the U.S., mainly automobiles and steel, which are currently subject to separate tariffs of 25% and 50% respectively under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. Yo also emphasized Seoul's commitment to bilateral cooperation in manufacturing, describing it as a way to achieve more balanced trade, which is one of the main reasons why President Trump is pushing for this trade war. Yo and Lutnick are scheduled to continue their talks on Wednesday local time, while Lee's visit to Washington is scheduled to wrap up on Tuesday, so we're expecting more details to come out once he returns to Seoul. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Eugene, thank you for the coverage. That was our Song Eugene reporting from the presidential office. Moving on then, a state-run think tank finds economic prospects for South Korea continue to appear challenging as the construction industry remains in the doldrums while external risk factors persist. Our Park Jun-an covers the latest findings.
The Korea Development Institute reported on Tuesday that South Korea's economy remained subdued, grappling with persistent weaknesses in construction and manufacturing, alongside rising trade uncertainties stemming from U.S. tariff pressure. This assessment was according to the monthly economic trends report released by the state-run think tank. Notably, production in May was hampered by a prolonged contraction in the construction sector, specifically a 20.8% year-on-year decline. The construction industry is considered a key pillar of domestic demand in South Korea, with a slowdown in the sector potentially weighing heavily on the broader economy.
Construction is closely tied to domestic demand, as it creates jobs and stimulates demand for building materials and nearby restaurants. So when the construction industry slows, that weakness ripples through the broader domestic economy.
Despite the domestic downturn, semiconductor production grew by 18.1% in May. Also, investment in related equipment sustained high growth of 7.5%. However, overall exports to the U.S. underperformed, growing only 1.9%, primarily due to a 16.1% drop in motor vehicle exports, driven by steep U.S. tariffs on automobiles. Given that the United States is one of South Korea's largest export destinations, an economic expert notes that rising tariff tensions may hurt the Korean economy.
I believe the impact of tariff uncertainty on the Korean economy is significant. If the 25% tariff is implemented, it will become more difficult for Korean businesses to export to the U.S. market. As exports decline, wage earners in export-related industries could face job insecurity.
However, the KDI pointed to signs of improved stability in the credit market and domestic consumption. It cited the benchmark Kospi's notable rise in June, a slight dollar depreciation, and policy expectations under the new president as factors behind improved investor sentiment. The institute also emphasized that a gradual easing of high interest rates and stimulus measures in the second supplementary budget aimed at boosting domestic consumption are likely to support a recovery in spending. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
Today, capital Seoul is enduring the hottest day of the year thus far, and health experts are warning against prolonged outdoor activity. Our Pyongyang was out and about.
Seoul is experiencing extreme heat, with Tuesday marking the hottest day of the year so far.
During the daytime, the temperature in Seoul can get higher than 36 degrees Celsius.
Seoul experienced its 9th consecutive tropical night on Monday, meaning that the nighttime lows do not drop lower than 25 degrees. South Korea's weather agency issued the season's first heat wave warning for all parts of Seoul on Monday, 18 days earlier than last year. The heat wave warning remains in effect for a second day on Tuesday, issued when perceived temperatures hit 35 degrees Celsius or higher for 2 days, or when severe heat-related damage is expected. For those in Seoul, the heat is more than just a nuisance.
I'm working outside, and it's so hot I feel like I'm going to melt. It's very hot. I want to go to the seaside.
I didn't feel it when I was driving this morning, but now I'm really feeling the heat. I've got a tan because I was recently on vacation, but now I'm kind of worried about my health and things like skin cancer.
Tuesday's temperatures climbed to over 37 degrees, marking the hottest day in early July since weather-related data began being recorded in 1907, breaking a 118-year record. The intense heat nationwide has also led to a sharp rise in heat-related illnesses. According to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, 875 cases were reported as of Sunday, up 83% from the same period last year. Data also revealed that 7 people have died from heat stroke since May 15th, more than double the number of deaths recorded in 2024. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
In other news, President Lee Jae-myung ushered in South Korea's first K-Defense Day earlier on this Tuesday with a call on his cabinet to consider the creation of a control tower to further nurture the defense industry. At a cabinet meeting, he also requested a review into prospects of setting up a regular strategy meeting to boost arms exports. In essence, the president urged pan-governmental efforts to ultimately rank South Korea among the world's top 4 defense powerhouses. The World Heritage Committee has rejected a review into Japan's commitment to the disclosure of accurate historical records at its UNESCO-listed industrial sites where many Koreans were forced into wartime labor. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
South Korea has voiced strong regret after a UNESCO committee rejected its proposal to review Japan's handling of wartime forced labor sites, including Hiroshima coal mine near Nagasaki. On Monday's annual session of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee in Paris, South Korea proposed a formal agenda to assess whether Japan had fulfilled its 2015 promise to acknowledge the use of Korean forced labor at its Meiji-era industrial sites. But Japan submitted a counter-proposal to delete the item, which was passed with 7 votes in favour, 3 opposing and 8 abstentions. The 21-member committee allows motions to pass with just 6 votes in favour. In 2015, Japan pledged to take steps to present the full historical context of 23 industrial sites, including forced labour under its colonial rule, as a condition for having them listed as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. However, Tokyo has failed to follow through on this pledge. Japan placed the Industrial Heritage Information Center in Tokyo, not Nagasaki, and failed to mention forced mobilization or discrimination against Korean laborers. This year, Nagasaki produced a virtual reality video to mark the 10th anniversary of the site's listing, but again omitted the history of forced labor, prompting further criticism. Some 57,900 Koreans were forced to work at 7 of Japan's registered sites during its colonial rule of Korea in the early 20th century. In 2021, UNESCO adopted a decision expressing strong regret over Japan's inadequate follow-up and urged it to uphold its commitment. 2 years later, the committee called on Japan to consult with concerned countries and produce new and enhanced measures on historical interpretation for review by December 2024. However, Tokyo decided to file an update instead of a proper report, which would be subject to a committee review. The World Heritage Committee has reviewed Japan's industrial sites every 2 to 3 years through progress reports. Thus, South Korea has stressed UNESCO has a duty to monitor implementation of its decisions. All member states under the World Heritage Convention have the right to raise concerns and request formal reviews. Japan pays the third largest amount of contributions to UNESCO's annual budget. Observers say this boosts its influence within the organization. South Korea says it will keep urging Tokyo to fulfill its international commitments while working to build forward-looking cooperation based on mutual trust. 오수영, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sat down for closed-door talks at the White House on Monday. Addressing members of the media, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt revealed that the ceasefire proposal supported by Israel had been delivered to Hamas and that the release of all hostages is Mr. Trump's top priority. Now, separately, during a dinner later in the day, the Israeli leader gave his American counterpart a copy of a letter that he had sent to the Nobel Prize Committee nominating Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. This marks Prime Minister Netanyahu's third visit to the U.S. during the second Trump administration. Back here on the local front, South Korean drug regulators have approved the world's first recombinant anthrax vaccine developed by researchers here. Our Park-Onu reports.
Made in Korea. That's a term describing the world's first recombinant anthrax vaccine, which is said to be manufactured in a plant in Hwasungun County in the southwest of South Korea, after decades of joint research between the public and private sectors. The Arirang vaccine uses recombinant protein technology, minimizing the toxic side effects of other conventional vaccines. For years, Korea had to rely on expensive imports for anthrax vaccines, but now that's starting to change. This homegrown vaccine isn't just set to be made in Korea, but will be the result of nearly 3 decades of accumulated research and technology. The vaccine was approved by the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety in April and is expected to be produced later this year. The Hwasun facility alone can produce up to 10 million doses annually, helping ensure a stable supply. However, there were challenges to developing a first-of-its-kind product.
Because this was the first recombinant anthrax vaccine, there were no established guidelines. We had to create and verify the evaluation standards step by step.
She stressed the importance of this immunization tool in national preparedness, especially to respond to global health crises, including bioterrorism. She added that those working in high-risk sectors, including lab researchers, military personnel, police, and firefighters, are being considered as priority groups for vaccination. While the product didn't go through a phase 3 clinical trial due to ethical constraints, there have been concerns regarding its efficacy.
We couldn't go through a full phase 3 clinical trial, but we confirmed efficacy through non-clinical tests with rabbits.
He added that rabbits are sensitive to anthrax and require high levels of neutralizing antibodies, which adds weight to the test results. He also said the shot is expected to be competitively priced, and rising global demand is widely opening possibilities for exports. From a country once reliant on foreign supply, Korea is now positioning itself as an exporter. And with this step toward vaccine self-reliance, expectations are rising for the future of K-vaccines. Park-Onu, Arirang News, Hwasun.
Meanwhile, Spain is the stage of South Korea's cultural program this year, and a recent dynamic performance in Madrid has become the talk of the town for touching upon the bilateral interest in dance as a form of universal expression. Our Choi Soo-young was there.
Spain is a country renowned for its dance and passion. And in its capital, Madrid, stands the cultural landmark, the Matadero Art Theatre. There, a special performance unfolded, blending the past and present of Korean dance. A dancer walked through a dream. Traditional Korean sounds, pansori, 장구, and jing, filled the space, setting the stage for a soulful dance. The swishing of hanji, Korean traditional paper, mimicked the sounds of waves, telling people what Korean dance is. Modern styles like b-boy, hip-hop, and street dance also caught the eye. Through intense movements, dancers told stories of conflict in modern society, showing how far Korean contemporary dance has come. The final stage brought a dynamic mix of tradition and modern emotion, full of color and energy. And in the encore, the entire audience danced together in Korean folk song Gangang Sulle, the circle dance, as one, a true moment of cultural harmony.
The dancers, the body language, the expression. At first I thought I would not understand because we've come from different cultures. We have maybe have different artistic languages, but it was so enjoyable. The expression and the story was super clear.
The performance was amazing. It was a mix between what you can know about contemporary dance and things you didn't know about Korean, but you can interpret or think about.
Since 2022, South Korea's Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism has selected one country each year with strong potential for spreading Korean culture, offering a year-long series of cultural programs on site. This year, Spain was chosen. On Friday, July 4th, the performance titled A Dance Between Cultures showcased the spirit of the 2025 Korea season. Featuring acclaimed Korean teams recognized both at home and at international festivals like the Edinburgh Fringe, the event brought Korea and Spain together through dance.
Koreans and Spaniards both love music and dance. Through sharing that energy, it's a great way to connect emotions and open hearts. We wanted to show performances that people would want to see again even years later, with a more open mind and a positive mindset.
Spain's cultural scene also said why dance plays such an important role in helping Spain understand Korea.
Very funny, we are so far, but we have the same system to protect our identity through the culture, through the tradition, through the idea to move the tradition to another way to be, to express. So the past and the future, always together, always dancing together.
Under the theme, Two Cultures, One Heart, the performance blended Korean traditional and contemporary dance with Spanish artistry, marking up half a highlight of this year's Korea season. Young, Arirang News, Madrid.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Former Russian Transport Minister Roman Starovoyt was found dead near Moscow on Monday, following his dismissal earlier the same day. 53-year-old Starovoyt was discovered with a gunshot wound in his car just hours after President Putin fired him in a presidential decree, with suicide believed to be the cause of death. No explanations were given regarding the reasons behind the dismissal. Starovoyt's removal came amid a corruption probe linked to allegations of embezzling approximately $246 million that were allocated for border fortifications, as well as criticism following disruptive drone attacks that grounded flights. Investigators are conducting a criminal probe to determine the exact cause of his death. Poland has temporarily reinstated border controls with Germany and Lithuania as of Monday, aiming to stop a reported surge in undocumented migration, particularly after violent incidents involving foreign nationals. However, the border controls have led to concerns of traffic jams at border crossings. 800 police officers, 200 border officials, and 500 soldiers have been deployed across 52 checkpoints on the German border and 13 checkpoints on the Lithuanian border. The move follows Germany's own strengthened border checks since 2023. Poland's prime minister says the controls are necessary to prevent Germany from returning migrants to Polish territory without oversight. Finally, Paris reopened 3 designated swimming sites along the Seine River for the first time in over a century on Saturday, following a major cleanup tied to the 2024 Olympics. The 3 locations are near the Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame, and the National Library. Officials confirm that the water is being tested daily to make sure it is safe. The river had been closed off since 1923 as it was too polluted to swim in safely. However, Paris invested $1.5 billion into cleaning up the river to ensure it was Olympic ready in 2024. 1,000 visitors will be allowed in each swimming site each day until the end of August. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
Today, Seoul recorded the hottest temperature this year, with daytime temperatures soaring up to 36 degrees Celsius under heat wave warning. If the temperature reaches 37 degrees, it is likely to be the hottest day in early July ever recorded in Seoul. The East Coast and the coastal areas of the Gyeongsang-do provinces, which were hotter than human body temperature until yesterday, are expected to be able to get out of the scorching heat for a while from today. In particular, the temperature on the East Coast, including Gangneung, is expected to drop below 30 degrees Celsius from today and stay under 30 degrees until later this week. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will start warm at around 27 degrees, Daejeon and Busan 24 degrees. Daily highs will go up to 34 degrees in Chuncheon, 35 degrees in Daejeon. Severe heat waves and tropical nights in the western parts of the country are expected to continue until later this week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching and do stay tuned for our panel session.